It's been another massive week in Brisbane, and while this video only has 10 updates and 2 events, you'll really want to know about them to stay in the loop with things happening across Greater Brisbane's LGAs and not miss some amazing opportunities. I also have tickets to give away for not 1 but 2 films coming to Brisbane this month, 1 horror and 1 action comedy. But let's start with the updates. We'll start with the introduction of the new bus network in Brisbane City, which saw the M1 Metro bus service joining the network along with some major changes across the suburbs, which included 5 new routes, changes to 12 existing routes to connect with the Metro bus lines, and the removal of 4 routes. Other routes have either been divided or combined with other routes, and some routes have been extended to become all-day services. On Monday, when the changes came into effect, there were so many people using the TransLink app to work out their routes that it crashed and was offline for about 40 minutes. While over 160,000 additional services will now run each year, some old stops have been decommissioned. There are now 44 more stops on the new network, however. While the new network aims to reduce bottlenecks into the city by reducing duplication of routes, with more commuters now transferring to Metro bus services rather than taking the whole journey on one bus route, some criticise the changes, saying that passengers travelling between suburbs rather than to and from the city are now worse off than before the changes. Better Transport Queensland points to a lack of off-peak and weekend services in many suburban areas, as well as the lack of frequency when it comes to routes passengers may need to transfer to for outbound routes, with some operating on an hourly basis or even worse. I'd like to investigate a little to see how suburban passengers are affected, but in the meantime I'd love to hear of your experience as a user of the bus network. Please do share in the comments. If you're looking for support with anxiety, depression, stress, ADHD, or relationship challenges, the sponsor of this video, Excel Psychology, may be what you're looking for. They're a warm, inclusive psychology practice based in Spring Hill, about 500 metres from Central Station. With a diverse team of clinical and registered psychologists, they'll help match you with the right psychologist for your needs, often with short wait times. They offer Medicare rebates with a mental health treatment plan and also support work cover and NDIS participants. I featured members of the Excel Psychology team in a recent video on handling stress. You can check that out here. Another significant update this week is the announcement of an agreement between the state and federal government on Olympics funding. On Thursday, the federal government announced that they'll be refining and reallocating their $3.435 billion contribution towards the $7.1 billion Games Venue Infrastructure Program. Together, the 2 levels of government will deliver 17 new and upgraded venues across Queensland. The state government said that site investigations will start soon for the 63,000-seat stadium at Victoria Park and the National Aquatic Centre site. At the same time, it was announced that procurement had begun for minor venues, including the Logan and Moreton Bay indoor sports centres. Construction is expected to start in 2026 for the Logan Centre, while the Moreton Bay Centre is scheduled to see its construction complete next year. The latest housing figures are out, and there's no surprises. Brisbane continues to grow more expensive whether you're buying or renting a home. Brisbane's dwelling prices rose 0.7% in June, and over the past 10 years to June, they've almost doubled in price. Brisbane still sits securely as the second most expensive Australian capital to both buy a house with a median price of over $1 million or a unit where the median price is close to $750,000. Here's the suburbs and towns in Greater Brisbane that have seen the largest increase in dwelling value over the last 12 months. As for rent, on average, prices rose in Brisbane by 2% in the second quarter of 2025. And with accommodation rising across the board, things aren't getting any easier for those struggling to have a place to live, which brings us to the next update. Human rights lawyers have challenged Moreton Bay City Council in the Supreme Court of Queensland over the destruction of homeless camps. The legal challenge was brought by Basic Rights Queensland and supported by a panel of lawyers working pro bono, who argue that the destruction of people's possessions constitutes a human rights violation. Until the hearing on the 24th, Moreton Bay Council have agreed to allow the 11 rough sleepers represented to remain in the bush reserve in Kalanga where they're currently camped, on the condition that they keep the area safe and tidy, don't conduct any illegal behaviour, and don't impede regular access by council workers and members of the public. I mentioned in last week's update that I'd have a video coming out that analyses the council budgets of the 5 Greater Brisbane LGAs to see not just where the rates have increased the most or are the highest, but what changes we're likely to see in each council's area based on where their spending is focused. Well, it turns out that putting that video together was a lot more work than I expected, as each council has varying levels of transparency, lists things in different ways, and comparing like for like is a challenge. I had intended to release that video this past week, but it's almost done and will be out next week. Moving on. Just when we think there'll be no more talk of Star Entertainment and the Queen's Wharf Precinct's troubles, they pop up again, like that clingy friend that invites himself over and just won't take a hint to leave. While a previous update here on the channel covered the deal that Star had struck with the other 2 parties in the Destination Brisbane Consortium, Chow Tai Fook and Far East Consortium, to sell its stake in the Queen's Wharf Casino and Hotel Complex for $53 million, the 2 Hong Kong corporations have threatened to bin the agreement, effective from Monday the 14th, unless Star is able to come to an agreement with them on what Star has called outstanding commercial issues. I guess we know one thing that we'll be talking about in the next weekly update. But to add to Star's pain, on Friday, hundreds of casino employees walked off the job from 4 p.m. to protest proposed cuts to penalty rates. Star is reportedly offering workers a 4% wage increase over 3 years, coupled with a cut to penalty rates on Sundays. One worker who had worked as a games dealer in the casino for 8 years told ABC reporters that many staff had seen their workload increase since moving from the Treasury building to Queen's Wharf. The current offer would put workers' wages on a level lower than the industry standard, even lower than workers in the same roles at Star's Sydney casino. If you find any of these updates interesting or helpful, giving the video a thumbs up helps the channel, and you can also say thanks by buying me a coffee, which helps support the work that goes into putting these videos together for the channel. You can also become a channel member, which will get you extra perks like a monthly What's On list and early ad-free access to many videos, and it also supports the channel. Thanks to these members for their continued and appreciated support. One of the Brisbane Lord Mayor's election promises was to expand the selection of locations where Brisbane residents could find a coffee cart to grab an espresso and enjoy the parks and outdoor locations that make Brisbane great. Well, starting from the 1st of July, Brisbane City Council have launched their Food Trucks and Coffee Carts program, expanding the number of locations from just 13 to over 100. There's also a new online system where people can see what food trucks and coffee carts are operating and where, which I must say I'm impressed with. But while the program is being framed as providing more choice and flexibility for operators, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. In the 2024-25 budget, the schedule for food truck operators required them to pay a design assessment fee of just over $465, an application fee of $19.30, and then each year an occupation fee of $184.20. Under the new program, the design assessment fee has been scrapped, but the application fee is now $160, and the occupation fee has now been divided into tiers. Tier 1 gives access to about 22% of available sites, mostly in neighbourhood parks, and costs $450 annually. Tier 2 gives access to about 80% of sites, including larger parks with facilities such as toilets, playgrounds and tables, and costs $1,650 annually. The third tier gives access to all sites, including sites of citywide significance in areas that draw significant foot traffic and provide greater exposure and opportunities, and requires a membership fee of $2,200. So while operators are better off when starting out as far as setup fees go, even the lowest tier, which only offers slightly more choice of sites than under the old program, they're paying considerably more in annual fees, let alone if they want access to the full range of sites. It's not a black and white better or worse thing, as they're getting far more options for locations, but they're definitely paying much more to access them. And I should mention that in the former budget, it only applied to food trucks, while the addition of coffee carts is new in this current budget. How would you like to take a look inside one of the Cross River Rail stations 4 years before they're likely to open to the public? Well, the annual event Brisbane Open House will be running again this year, and this could be your chance. Open House is where a range of areas and buildings that are not usually accessible to the public open up for one weekend. Most have free access, but some require you to purchase a ticket. One of the free ones is the Roma Street Cross River Rail Station, where they'll be running a 3-hour tour led by some of the Cross River Rail's senior engineers, along with representatives of Hassel, the architecture firm that designed the station. As the number of people who can join is very limited and they are aware that this would be a very popular offering, the organisers are running a ballot where you can enter to be one of the lucky few to join the tour. I've put a link in the video description, which is probably a stupid thing for me to do as I'll be entering myself. But you should also check out the other places you can explore over the weekend on the 19th and the 20th. And thinking about the new Cross River rail stations, a symbol of the new era of Brisbane's rail network, this weekend we saw the end of an old one. The last of Queensland's first ever fleet of electric trains, the Electric Multiple Units, or EMUs, took one last tour of Brisbane's rail network before retiring. Between 1979 and 1987, 88 units were built in Maryborough, Queensland, and the very first testing of an electric train in the state was conducted between Roma Street and Corinda stations on the 4th of September 1979, with timetabled services starting on November 19 of the same year.
Look, they're just a special train. It's as simple as that. They've got a little bit of personality. Every one of the EMUs is just a little bit different to the other. And when you first start driving them, you've got to take a station or two to learn the personality of the EMU you're driving, just to get the best out of it.
Retirement of the EMUs started in 2018. Now to the quick bites, some quick updates on things to be aware of across Greater Brisbane, and this week I've got only two, starting in downtown Brisbane, where Mary Street will be closed from 7 p.m. on Monday evening until 5 a.m. the next day for Cross River Rail Works. Bus stop 50 near Albert Street will also be closed, with buses stopping at Botanical Gardens Alice Street. The other quick bite is that 75 social and affordable homes are currently under construction in Yeronga, expected to be ready by mid-2027. They're among over 720 social and affordable homes being constructed or under contract to be delivered, including these ones. A Greater Brisbane event you may like to check out is Spark Festival, which begins on the 11th of July and runs until the 20th. It has lots of great events for all ages, including Spark After Dark, a collection of interactive art and experiences with light projection, music and performance, the Bubble Canteen, and Street Art Jam, a crossover of street art and skating culture. Definitely worth taking a look at the program, even if you live outside of Ipswich. I'll definitely be checking it out. And now let's get to the two film giveaways. The first is for Together, a bold and twisted new horror film directed by rising Australian filmmaker Michael Shanks. Starring real-life couple Dave Franco and Alison Brie, The Guardian says it's a convincingly gory argument for being single. The film opens in cinemas on the 31st, and thanks to Kismet Movies, I have 5 Admit 2 tickets to give away. To enter, visit the Brisbane Channel's Instagram page, follow the Brisbane Channel, and leave a comment tagging at least one friend. I'll draw the winners in a live stream on Friday evening at 7 p.m. Maybe horror's not your thing, but fear not. I have tickets to a preview screening of Bride Hard. Think Die Hard meets Bridesmaids in this hilarious action comedy starring Australia's very own Rebel Wilson as a secret agent whose latest mission crashes a wedding. It hits cinemas on July 31st, but I have 10 Admit 2 tickets to the preview screening on the 28th. To enter, again head to the Brisbane Channel's Instagram account, make sure you're following, and on the post for Bride Hard, tag at least one friend in your comment. Winners will be drawn in the same live stream as the winners for Together tickets. Of course, if you're not already, make sure you're subscribing, and YouTube recommends you check out this video as the next one. See you there or in the next video. The first is for Together, a bold and twisted new horror film directed by rising Australian filmmaker Michael Skanks. Skanks Shanks.